Yesterday, Katie took some seeds from the larkspur flowers in her garden and put them in a little brown envelope to give to our neighbor, Veronica. Katie's been growing these flowers for about 5 years, and they've just thrived in our garden, and they're starting to move into other areas. Veronica is a young woman who lives next door, across the street, with her husband and a 6-year-old daughter. And she's growing her own garden. She's trying to collect seeds of plants that will work well in our neighborhood. And so she often turns to Katie for advice on how to grow a garden. What plants grow well here? How do you build up your soil? And Katie's been gardening for almost 15 years, so she knows a little bit about what works in our area. You can go to the internet and do a Google search for gardening, and you can find some general advice about gardening. But the only way to really find out what works in your neighborhood is to go to other people in your neighborhood, to the other gardeners. They're the ones that know, what the planting season is, when you put your garden in, and when you harvest, and when the first frost comes, when's the right time to do things. And so the gardeners are the ones that know, and the gardeners are the stewards of their land, of their little gardens, of little patches of gardens. Now, in the Bible, in the creation story, in the first chapter of Genesis, it says that God created humankind in his image, and God blessed them and told them to be fruitful and multiply, to fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and every living thing that moves. Now, that word dominion is a difficult word. God said that the human, the first human, Adam, should have dominion over the fish and the birds and all living things. And it's been taken to mean having absolute control and power to do anything you wanted to do. But the dominion that God has given to us is not a dominion to destroy. Human beings are supposed to be stewards of the earth. And as the creation story goes on in chapter 2 of Genesis, God takes the first human being, Adam, puts him in the Garden of Eden, and tells him to till it and to keep it. In other words, to be a gardener. So, dominion doesn't mean domination. It means stewardship. We are stewardship. We are stewards, and we're accountable to God for our stewardship of the earth. That's what that story means. So being a gardener means to be a steward of your garden, your little plot of earth. And Katie says that if you listen to the plants in your garden, they'll tell you what's best for them. Sometimes the plants migrate to another section of the garden that's better for them. And so if you listen to them and plant them there, they'll do better. If you listen to the plants in the garden, you don't need to use pesticides and herbicides, but they'll thrive on their own. You create the conditions for them to thrive. For too long, we humans have thought of dominion as domination. When the settlers came west and settled in the Pacific Northwest, they thought the forests were so vast and so deep that there was no way we could ever cut them down. But it didn't take long before we clear-cut almost every last tree in the Northwest. And the settlers saw the wilderness as something to be cut down and to be tamed. The settlers saw it as something frightening, something scary that they had to fight against. So there was this adversarial relationship with nature and with the wilderness. And now we know just how destructive that is. The first settlers came and cut down the forests. They thought there were so many fish, so many salmon in the streams, that there's no way we could ever fish those streams out. But it didn't take that long before many of the streams, salmon runs, were wiped out. Some of it was greed, and some of it was ignorance. In the last century, when we started developing all the road systems throughout the forests and everywhere, we put in a culvert whenever we came to a stream, and that kept the water flowing, and we could drive over it. We thought nothing of it. But later on, we realized that every time we put a culvert over a stream, we were blocking salmon from going up into little tributaries where they could spawn. And so we were ruining the salmon streams without even knowing it. And so we spent billions of dollars going back in and replacing these culverts. We've learned the hard way that domination doesn't work. In the last 50 years, 60% of all the species on Earth have been wiped out because we've destroyed their habitat. Our oceans are warming and acidifying. The coral reefs are dying. There's plastics circulating in the ocean and accumulating into these huge floating blobs. We've treated the Earth like it's a resource that can be used up and thrown out. And it's not working. It's time now for us to be gardeners of the earth, to till and to keep the land. We need to listen to the earth and let it tell us what it needs. We are supposed to be the stewards of this beautiful earth that God has given us. Earth is not a thing to be used up and thrown out. It's a gift from God. It's a sacred gift, and we are stewards of this sacred gift. It's only when we see the earth as a sacred thing, as a holy thing, and as a gift from God, that we're going to be able to live in harmony with the planet. When we can see God in every blade of grass and every grain of sand and every sunset and every sunrise, then we begin to see ourselves as stewards of God's gift, not just owners of a resource. Wendell Berry is a farmer and a poet, and he's written a lot about the care of the earth. He wrote this: "What is good for the world will be good for us. That requires that we make the effort to know the world and to learn what is good for it. We must learn to cooperate in its processes and to yield to its limits. But even more importantly, we must learn to acknowledge that the creation itself is full of mystery. We will never entirely understand it. We must abandon arrogance and stand in awe. We must recover the sense of the majesty of the creation and the ability to be worshipful in its presence. For I do not doubt that it is only on the condition of humility and reverence before the world that our species will be able to remain in it." Well, those words that he's using, humility and reverence and awe and majesty, those are religious words. That is what we are called as religious people, especially to do, to live in reverence for this gift that God has given us. Today is the third Sunday of the season of creation that we're celebrating in September. And we're focusing on our care of the earth, how important the earth is to us, and taking care of the earth. We remember that we need to become gardeners of the earth, to listen to the earth. And it begins right in our front yard, We step out of the house and we feel the fresh air. We see the sun coming up. We smell the pine needles. We step on the gravel. That's when we remember our relationship to the earth. I'll close with a quote from The Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. Love all of God's creation, the whole of it, and every grain of sand. Love every leaf, every ray of God's light. Love the animals, love the plants, love everything. If you love everything, you will soon perceive the divine mystery in things. Once you perceive it, you will begin to comprehend it better every day. And you will come at last to love the whole world with an all-embracing love.